I massively struggled picking the plants for this video. I thought long and hard about which 3 plants from each sort of genus or category that I would want to have in order to kind of create my perfect houseplant collection. But I do want to say this is not my original video idea. I have done previously like my favorite plant from each genus, but this one, Wild Fern, recently did a video where she shared 3 plants from each genus to kind of make her perfect mini collection, and I really enjoyed her video. But I was thinking, and my picks were actually quite different to what she picked. Some are the same, but like for the most part, we have different picks for our sort of ideal houseplant collection. And so I thought I would share mine with you as well. I highly recommend you go watch her video. I will link it down below in the description. Because like I said, this is my idea. I'm copying it. Sorry, Fern. Not that I know you, but like, it was a good idea. I really appreciate it, so thank you. But before we get into my picks, I want to say if you're new here and you don't know me already, hi, my name is Emma and I make houseplanty content all over the internet. So if you want to follow along with my houseplanty journey and maybe learn something along the way, stick around or watch some more of my videos and subscribe to my channel. If you are not new here, welcome back. I really appreciate you returning, and click the bell icon if you want to get notified when I post videos, if that's your jam. But let's get on into this, because we've got a lot to get through. So the categories I have, which I've put all my notes on my phone so I know all of them. The categories I have are anthurium, philodendrons, monstera, hoya, begonias, alocasias, jungle cacti, which I've kind of grouped together, sort of ripsalis and epiphyllum, because I find them similar enough that I'm just going to group them together. It's my video, I can do what I want. Epipremnum and scindapsus, which I'm putting together as well because they're similar enough. And then cacti and succulents, which again, I'm grouping. And also I do have an other category, plants that like didn't fit into a genus that I have multiples of, that I would definitely want to have in my sort of final mini collection. So I think I've got like just over 30 plants on here that if I had to, I guess, only have 30 something plants, I guess it would be these ones. So I've also tried to focus on creating a sort of variety within each genus, so they're not like all very similar plants, so we can have a diverse sort of mini collection as well. And so there's lots on here. I'm so excited. Okay, let's start with anthuriums then. First up, we have my anthurium regale, and for the bigger plants like this one, I'm not going to pull it out because it's just a lot of work and effort, and I genuinely can't hold this plant while showing it to you at the same time because it's so big. But my anthurium regale is one of my favorites, even though it looks kind of silly with its like browning leaves and it's got holes in it. I don't really mind. I think just having the big leaves for an anthurium, that's like super duper important. I would want at least one with really, really, really big striking sort of shield leaves. And my regale has been the sort of favorite for that sort of category. And it's like dark and velvety, which is super fun as well. So I think it makes the most sense for the sort of velvety anthuriums. The next one is my anthurium pallidiflorum, and so that kind of goes now into like getting something kind of long and skinny and sort of drapey, but it's still an anthurium and it's still really fun, and that one's still velvety as well. It's a bit of a lighter green, so it would kind of create a nice contrast. I think they would look really nice next to each other. I mean, I don't have them next to each other in my collection, but I think they would look nice by each other. And I've also found that my pallidiflorum is so incredibly easy to take care of. It has such minimal needs for an anthurium, whereas the regale is a little bit more work. My pallidiflorum is just basically perfect without me doing anything to it, and recently it's been popping out some quite nice long leaves as well. Like the last new leaf that's come out recently was 75 centimeters when I measured it, and I don't think it was even done sizing up yet. So she big and she beautiful, and I'm like absolutely obsessed with her. And so like there was no way she wasn't going to be as part of this collection. And then picking the third ones of this category is always the hardest, just because I want to keep variety in here, and there's definitely some other things I could choose, but from my collection, I think it would be the anthurium sp limon. here because it's so very different to the other anthuriums. This one is more of a climbing anthurium. You can see I've got it on a pole here. It's got hella roots in there. It's really, really lovely. And the leaves are sort of like a lighter, more bluey green, which I quite like. And they're like sort of abbey, similar to the sort of like luxurians, which I'm not really a fan of personally, not really my cup of tea, but this is just something about this one just makes me really excited and happy. I know they get sort of different leaf shape when they grow bigger, but mine's not there yet. And I don't know if I like that different leaf shape or not, but I do know that I love how they look right now. They kind of look like Cebu blues, which is something that I enjoy. But watching these leaves emerge is one of my absolute favorite things. You can see I've got a bit of a baby one in there that's just starting to come out. And I'm curious to see how big it gets because the last leaf on that one was this size. So I'm thinking it'll probably be similar in size to that one. So it's a very fun anthurium and it's very different, very much so it's not like other girls. It's not like other anthuriums and not very many people have it as well. So I feel like it would like add a little bit of rarity to the collection, which is fun. Going into Hoyas, the first one that I put on my list, which I knew was absolutely 100% like must be there because it is my probably all-time favorite. It is the Hoya polyneura. This gorgeous sort of fishtail-leaved polyneura. It matches my tattoo. I've talked about this over and over again. I love this Hoya so, so much. And mine even has like a little bit of variegation on there. And I know you can get like super variegated ones like the Broglie or even like the inner or outer variegated ones. I don't have those. I would love them. And maybe I could switch one out for them. But I genuinely think having the green one in there would be my choice just because it is so beautiful and it grows very, very well for me. And it's also quite low light tolerant. I don't have mine in a particularly fancy space. It's not getting any sort of grow light or anything, and it's still growing very, very well for me and popping out new leaves here and there, which is nice. And it's super resilient as well. I had flat mites on this one and she bounced back great. It was riddled with flat mites, like lots and lots and lots. So I'm very pleased that it was able to bounce back so well from that. And like I didn't really lose much of it to it. It just didn't grow for a little while. So this is definitely coming with me in my in this situation where I can only have 3 of each genus. And then because that's a hanging one, I figured having something that's more trellisy or like growing upward and bigger leaved was important. So I've got my Hoya obovata. It is still sort of sorting itself out after being put onto this trellis in my last video, I think it was. And so it's still looking a little bit funky, but the sort of big splashy leaves on it are beautiful. And again, I guess it's kind of got similar coloration to the polyneura, the sort of dark green, and this one has splashes, but this one's splashes are a lot more regular, and the leaves on this one are thicker. The stems are thicker as well. They're sort of a more woody stem. And I just feel like if I were to go for a big leafed Hoya, it would be this one. I suppose you could go for something like a latifolia, but I don't have one, and I feel like I'd prefer this one anyways. So with those two in mind, I'm trying to think of something like slightly different that's probably more on the silvery side because I do love myself a silvery Hoya, but that also flowers, because both of those, I mean, my polyneura has flowered once, and I'm pretty sure it was a death bloom. My ovibata hasn't flowered for me. I wanted one that flowers because Hoya flowers are so much fun, and my most prolific flowerer is also one that is quite silver, and I would specifically say the Croniana Super Silver would be a great addition next to them. This one is a mixed pot where like this bunch is sort of a splash and this bit is the super silver. If I had a massive full pot of just the super silver, I would pick that personally, but this one is the most prolific grower frickin' ever. It's got like a bajillion peduncles on it at the minute, and they're all starting to like pop out. I think it's gonna have a brilliant flowering season, and I also quite like that this is a smaller leafed one, much smaller than the Polyneura, and it trails nicely. So having this one plus the like sort of spreading out of the Polyneura and the upright of the Ovovata sort of creates a really nice contrast between the three of them, and I feel like it gives a decent variety. I will say they are all splashy, and they are all the sort of wax leafed hoyas. I could have gone for something that was a bit more fuzzy, like a globulosa, or even the linearis, but I don't think they grow as well for me as these three, which have been super easy, low maintenance, like chill, fast growing plants. Well, I mean, the Ovovata is fast growing now. It took a little bit to get it started, but it is now fast growing, and I do really, really like it. So yeah, those would be my three. It was hard. It was hard pickings for that one, but this is by far not the hardest category. I think alocasias are the hardest one, so let's do those next. This one was extremely tricky because a lot of these alocasias, I mean, I think most alocasias grow fairly similarly, sort of growing style-wise. They just grow like this. And so there's not that much variety in that. But I was trying to think if I could find some like variety in size or leaf shape or color or texture even. What would I pick? And the first one that came to mind, because it is a very easy grower in my experience and has silvery leaves, which y'all know that I love, is the Alocasia heterophylla dragon's breath. And I'm not going to pull it out. Or maybe I should pull it out. Let me pull it out. I cannot be lazy with this. It is just really big and like kind of awkward to show, but the heterophylla dragon's breath has been one of the easiest growers for me, and it sized up so incredibly fast. I showed in my like where are they now video that I got this one last year as a pretty small plant. It wasn't tiny, but it wasn't big. But in the past year, it has just grown insanely, and the leaves have sort of maybe doubled or more in size and grown even more sort of sinister looking, which I really like. And like these sort of silvery leaves with the dark veination on them. Like how could I not include this one, because it has been such an easy grower for me and a really fun one as well. So this one was up there on the list. And then I was thinking, okay, maybe let's have some variegation in there, because I like a bit of variegation in my alocasias, and they're becoming more and more popular. And the best variegated alocasia I have is the variegated Friedeck, which has definitely been a little bit of a struggle for me. It's not been the easiest one, but since getting this one, I've been able to grow it a lot better, and the variegation on these leaves is just stunning. I love how mottled it is, and I've got the one over here that I showed the other day that's got this sort of like all white growth, and it sort of alternates between all white and all green. So that's a really fun aspect of it. So you can kind of get different growing styles in there. And this one can grow massive as well. Mine's not tiny, but not huge either. It's like getting there. But I figured some variegation would be nice in there. And the leaves are velvety, which is very different to the sort of waxier, leatherier leaves of the heterophylla. So that adds a little bit of contrast and difference in there. And then the third one was hard. I found it really difficult to pick this last one, so I do have two honorable mentions that I'm gonna bring up before the one that I've actually chosen. So honorable mentions go to the Alocasia Jacqueline, because it's got sort of funky shaped leaves, as well as they're like sort of furry. And then the Alocasia Stingray, because it's got the sort of funky leaf shape as well, and more of like a striped stem. So those are both honorable mentions, but I had to go with my Alocasia Dragon Scale, because it's a sort of jewel alocasia, so it grows slightly different. Those are both very like thin-leafed ones, whereas the dragon scale is got a lot thicker of leaves and much rounder in its leaf shape and sort of ridgy as well, as opposed to those ones which are both quite flat. And the dragon scale has been a super chill one for me too. It's one that lives outside of my cabinet where a lot of the other alocasias I have live. A lot of them prefer the sort of higher humidity, whereas my dragon scale is just like totally chill being out in my house, and it still grows like quite large leaves that are really, really beautiful. So I had to go with that one. And oh, it's so hard. I keep thinking of more that I could put in. Like, I wish I had a black velvet that I could put in, but my black velvets are a bit funky. The cupria back there is really nice as well. There's just so many good choices for alocasia. It was really, really difficult, but I mean, potentially, if you could hybridize these three, you could have like nearly infinite sort of types of alocasia, which would be quite fun. So, those are the three. Like I'm struggling just accepting that those are the only ones that I'm allowed because they're all so nice. But those are my favorites. For philodendrons, because there's such a large variety in them, I limited myself to one climbing one self-heading one, and one trailing one. And that's how I picked. So we have some nice variety in here of like different growing styles. So the climbing one is probably no surprise if you're familiar with my plants. It is my philodendron glorious. It is one of my favorite plants of all time. And oh my goodness, she's just like the most beautiful thing ever. And she just grows so well for me. And some of her leaves are just absolutely massive. And I could not have my collection without her. That was like a no-brainer. I was 100% going to pick that one as my climber. And the sort of dark, velvety, heart-shaped leaves, chef's kiss, phenomenal. And it's like all the great things about a glorious and a melanochrysum combined because it's a hybrid of them. So you just get the best of all worlds in that, because I struggle with both of those on their own. But together, they just make the perfect plant, in my opinion. The philodendron glorious, 100% would pick that any day. For the self-heading one, it was a pretty easy choice. I tend to struggle with self-heading philodendrons a little bit more, but this beautiful one here, the philodendron melanonii, I don't struggle with at all, and it is just big and beautiful and really adds a lot of jungle vibes to my home. It's got huge leaves, and I mean, look at it in that corner. It's very sprawly, it takes up a lot of space. I don't have anywhere else in my home I could put it, but I love this one, and it's just a really, really nice one. It's also flowered for me a few times, and I think that's fun because not very many philodendrons actually flower as houseplants, so that's cool. And it's probably the only self-heading one that I might ever have again. Potentially. I probably not. I'll probably have more because, let's be honest, I like to try things. But you know, I could probably live without trying another one. But yeah, just that one is just primo. And because those were both solid philodendrons, I wanted to put a little bit of variegation in there for my hanging one. And so I think I would pick, I don't have a solo pot of it just because I don't, but I think I would pick the philodendron cream splash, this guy right here, as my sort of hanging philodendron. I suppose you could grow it climbing as well, but I think they really suit trailing down. I've had this one in my mixed pot with the Brazil for a while, and I mean, I could pick the Brazil. The Brazil is a nice one, but I think I like the cream splash just a little bit better because of the different coloration of the leaf. Ooh. Or do I want the variegated heartleaf? That's an honorable mention because it is really nice. Okay, yeah, honorable mention goes to the variegated heartleaf because it is just phenomenal. And it grows basically like a normal heartleaf philodendron, but it's got variegation on it, which, I mean, I like, and that adds a little bit of texture to things, but I feel like this one is a little bit more fun. Just like this sort of coloration on it. It's like sort of tricolory. And very easy care. This one gets no grow light, barely any paying attention to, and is perfectly fine and happy, just living above my bed. And it's dusty half the time. It's a little bit dusty right now, but she's good. She grows anyway. And I mean, the growth isn't perfect. And yes, I know it's kind of getting small down the bottom, but that's what you get for putting it in a place with not very much light. Though at the same time, it's growing in like extremely variegated, so like, is it fine? Maybe it's just getting smaller because it's hanging as opposed to climbing. So anyways, the cream splash. That's my final pick. For monsteras, I actually don't have very many of them in my collection right now. And I mean, I've tried loads, but there's a lot of them that don't really vibe with me or like grow well for me. And so I've just kind of decided they weren't for me. But I was able to pick 3 pretty nice ones. So let's go through them. First off, Monstera Thai Constellation. Absolutely my first pick because it's the sort of classic Monstera deliciosa leaf, but variegated, and I think they are inherently large form as well. And so they can grow huge, huge leaves with like the secondary, tertiary, quadrupleary fenestrations in it and just grow really, really well. Mine definitely took its time to get to a point where it has been growing decently, but in the past year it's really been growing well for me and putting out lots of new leaves. It's got a new leaf coming out right now. You can see it just in there. And it's got so many splits on it. It's going to be so big and beautiful, and it's quite nicely variegated from what I can see. It looks really nice in there, so definitely the Thai Constellation, 100%. And the next one I picked was the Monstera dubia. And I do quite like this one because you can grow it in 2 different ways. In its sort of juvenile form where it grows shingling and with more like silvery splotches on it. That's quite fun. But the one I have right now is a mature form of the dubia where it's stopped shingling and it started to fenestrate and it's lost its silveriness. But oh my goodness, I love watching the dubia grow so, so much, and it grows so incredibly fast, and the roots on it are crazy. Like, I haven't seen such an amazing rooter into a moss pole ever. It is just so, so cool through the entirety of the sort of stem, not just at the nodes. It is rooting into the pole. It's like little caterpillar feet. They look like millipedes, almost, the stems, because they've got so many little aerial roots trying to grow into the pole. Very cool. Fairly easy growing as well. I mean, you have to make sure the moss pole stays moist because that's where most of its roots are. But it's pretty chill otherwise. And the fenestrations are fun, and the leaves, it sizes up really, really well too. I found it sizes up for me better than the sort of deliciosas do. Given the one I got was already a mature form, but the difference in leaves between the bottom ones, which have like maybe 1 or 2 fenestrations, and the top biggest one, which is like this big, I swear, it's not that much. It grew very, very quickly into that sort of size. And then the only kind of other option I have that makes sense is the Monstera obliqua Peru. It's a more small-leafed Monstera, and again, climbing. And this one is doing pretty well, so like I wouldn't complain. I wouldn't be mad having this one as my sort of third choice, but at the same time, like, I don't know, it's not my favorite. I don't think I would pick an Adansonii. I don't really have, I just don't, like, I'm not really a Monstera Peru person. The only other one I could think of that I think would go well with these 3 would maybe be the Monstera Burlmarks Flame. I don't have one, and I don't know if I ever will. I didn't really see the appeal of them originally, but after seeing one in person and feeling the leaves are like quite thick and nice, and the sort of fenestrations it has on it are really cool. So I feel like that would be a good third plant to have in this one. But since I don't have one, it's going to have to be the Obliqua Peru. And I mean, the fenestrations are really freaking cool on this one. They are really fun. And it's cool that this one's a smaller leafed one as well. I don't know if you can grow the obliqua sort of hanging like you would a sort of Adansonii. Can you? If anyone has experience in that, let me know. But I've just got mine on a little moss pole. I don't know if it's growing particularly well into the moss pole. A little bit, but not tons. It could definitely do better. It's just okay. I just don't have very many other options, really, at all. I feel like do I only have, like, my variegated monstera? And that's definitely not going in there because I've been struggling with that one, so I guess it just has to be this one. For begonias, as of right now, I don't think I would put any Rex or rhizomaceous begonias in there just because I have generally struggled with them a little bit more. And yes, it would, in theory, add more variety to this selection, but I think for ease of care, I am going to pick 3 cane begonias because they're just way easier in my experience, and so there will be similarities between them because they're cane begonias. They're just generally a bit similar. They're all a bit polka dotty, kind of. The first one I have to include on this list, my favorite goth plant, the Begonia Arabian Sunset. It grew so well for me, and at first, I can't believe this, at first I didn't like this plant. I got it in a swap box, and I was just like, yay, and a red begonia, yeah. But oh my goodness, it has grown on me so much, and it has grown so much. She is absolutely massive, and the sort of black front leaves with the red backs and the little barbiness on them. Absolutely love it. Putting that in there. And also, I do quite like that the leaves stay fairly small on it. They're not massive. And then going kind of in the complete opposite direction, if you can, with cane begonias, we've got the Begonia Corallina de Lucerna. She is huge leaves, big, and more of a lighter green with those classic sort of silvery cane begonia spots on them, and grows so well. I've got her in the worst spot in my home, in the kitchen, and it's in a window, but the window gets barely any light, so like, I wouldn't call anything. I barely touch it because it's kind of out of the way from the rest of my collection, but she just thrives and is growing huge as well. I got her from cuttings, and she's just like quadrupled in size since I got it around this time last year, actually. So it's been a year, and she went from cuttings to this. How can we not like that? It's just grown so well for me. And then picking the third one was the hardest, but I was thinking I kind of needed some silveriness, light green in there, and so I picked out the Begonia Sinbad. And I know this one isn't like proper silver, like the sort of Hatakoa silver. I wouldn't pick that one. That one's been a pain in my butt. But kind of from far away, this one gives silver vibes because the sort of spots on it are all so tiny. They kind of blend together from afar and create a sort of beautiful silvery effect. And some of the leaves come in pink as well, which adds a nice coloration. And this one has been a really good grower for me as well. I haven't had it for very long, but I feel like it was the right choice for the third one because it's just an easy grower. It's very laid back, and this one grows more bushy as well, whereas I feel like the Corallina grows very much so upwards. And I mean, I suppose the Arabian Sunset grows bushy too, but this one, I feel like the internodal space is very tight compared to some of my other cane begonias, and so I had to include her. She's just really cool, and she's blooming for me right now, still. I feel like this flower's a little bit better because it's actually got some of the little yellowy bit in it. Very fun. Okay, for jungle cacti, like I said earlier, I'm gonna join together Epiphyllum and Ripsalis because they're near enough the same. They get the same care in my home, and so we're gonna join them together. And the first one, which probably comes at no surprise to any of you, the fern leaf. Oh my god. I love it so much. It's kind of like the fishbone cactus, but better in my opinion. I love these sort of elongated bits of leaves. And fun fact, technically these aren't leaves at all. They're just like stem elongation. It's like a mutated stem, which I think is kind of fun. So this one doesn't even have leaves. So it's really cool, and I just love the way it branches out, and it's grown really, really well for me. They prop like no other in soil, just really, really easy, and very much so, again, jungle vibes. This gives my home jungle vibes, and I absolutely love it. I do give this one a little bit more care than, I suppose, many of my other jungle cacti. I kind of just leave them for the most part, but this one gets grow light, and I think it does quite like that. Just a little bit of extra light. You can see it's growing towards the grow light with this stalk, which is very much so upright compared to most of the rest, which kind of hang down. So it's a really beautiful one. I absolutely love it. One of my top plants of all time. And then the other two were slightly more difficult choices, but I've picked another epiphyllum. So this guy here, or do I want a Ripsalis? Do I want a Ripsalis? Oh, I don't know. No. I don't want a Ripsalis. I don't want my Lepisvium. I'd rather this one because I think it is cool and funky. This is a Guatemalense, or a curly Sue cactus. And I find it really fun, and like, it's just a bit weird and strange, and I quite like that about it. And when they grow longer, they just kind of look like a tangled mess. And like, in a good way though. I know that sounds weird, but I find him, again, really, really easy, has grown super well for me, has been fairly pest resistant. I'm pretty sure this one got thrips at one point, and just like, it didn't care. It sort of just kind of went woody in there and turned the damage into that instead of freaking out. Since then, it hasn't had pests, and it's been a really easy one. And I quite like the sort of edge of these leaves as well. I guess these are technically stems too, but I like how the edge is a bit more, I guess it is kind of woody on the edges. I don't know. I just think it's fun and cool and different and a little bit weird. And so compared to the fern leaf, it's just a very different vibe. And then this last one, I don't have a very big one, but I kind of wanted to chuck some variegation in there, and so I have included the variegated Thanksgiving cactus. And so mine is still quite small, but it is fairly resilient. She's getting there. She is growing. You can see I've got some new sort of leaves coming in there, so it's on its way. It's not been a smooth ride with this one, but I think once it grows a little bit bigger and kind of gets a little bit more established, it'll be worth it, because Thanksgiving cacti are fairly resilient and easy once they're sort of a little bit bigger. And one day this one could bloom as well. I mean, I think all jungle cacti can bloom, but I haven't really experienced blooming from any of the ones in my collection, really. I think my Lepismiums bloomed once, but yeah, I could pick a Lepismium or a mistletoe cactus, like a Ripsalis, but I'm gonna go with the Slumberjura, the Thanksgiving cactus. But I just really wanted some variegation in there because I really like these sort of leaves. They're really fun and pretty, really. I just wanted some prettiness. I like variegation, what can I say? And I wanted to include some variegation in my, oh my god, could you imagine a variegated fern leaf? If that plant exists out there, I'm gonna need to find it because that would be amazing. Again, for this category, I've kind of joined two together. So we're gonna talk about epipremnum and scindapsus together. In theory, I could do a scindapsus one all on its own, but I feel like they're very samey. It's just sort of like different types of variegation. They're not like different plants. And like, I mean, half the scindapsus I have are in one big mixed pot anyways, so like it's not that different. But I didn't want to like not include them at all because I do really love my scindapsus. But first one in this category is actually an epipremnum. It is a Cebu Blue. One of my absolute favorite plants of all time. I feel like lots of my favorite plants of all time are on this list because they're my favorites. They're ones I really, really like, and I don't think I could live without. And the Cebu Blue is definitely up there with these sort of leathery, long, silvery blue leaves. Like, I'm absolutely obsessed. And another good thing about, I feel like most epipremnum and scindapsus is you could grow them trailing like this, but you could also grow them climbing. If I had to pick just one, I'd probably pick my climbing Cebu Blue because eventually it would grow to fenestrate, which I do quite like, but I do really love the trailing one as well, and I do think it looks really nice like this. So some sort of Cebu Blue would definitely be up there, and that I would definitely need to include. For the scindapsus, I would pick an exotica just because I feel like they're just a little bit more of a statement than the sort of typical satin pothos argyraeus because the leaves are a little bit bigger, a little bit more silvery, and I feel like it's just generally a little bit more of a resilient plant. I think because they have bigger leaves, they're just a little bit more tolerant, and I don't experience damage on them as much as I experience damage on my argyraeus, but I had to include this one. Like, oh, it is so, so beautiful, and it's got like the sort of dark green, velvety leaves with the silver splashes. I think it's probably one of my favorite scindapsuses, and it is so chill, and they're also cheap and easy to find, so it's like, it's really easy to attain. If you were going to actually go out and make this like collection of 30-something plants into like a wish list that you actually bought, this one would be on the cheaper side of things, and it'd be quite easy to get, and they chop and prop fairly easily. I suppose you could grow it climbing. My one in the bedroom is actually shingling on the ceiling, and so that could be a cool option if you could grow it up a wall or a plank or something and get it to shingle. That would be quite fun. It would kind of give like Monstera dubia vibes then, which is fun. So definitely including this one in there. And then the last one, it was definitely a sort of toss-up between the many white and green epipremnum orums I have, sort of between the Pothos and Joy, the Pearls and Jade, the Marble Queen, Snow Queen, if you want to go even more variegated. But I ended up deciding on the Manjula Pothos, which I have back here climbing. And I think part of that is just because I have grown it climbing, and so it's been able to grow quite large leaves. And it gives me such good vibes. It's one, very, very easy to care for. I mean, I water the moss pole, but like, don't really give it much else. It does get some grow light, and so it does quite like that, but it has just grown amazingly for me, especially on the moss pole. You can also grow them trailing, which is fine. They just won't get the sort of big leaves like mine has gotten. But I really like the variegation on it as well. It's sort of a mixture between like white dappled and solid green bits. So it's kind of the best of both worlds between the sort of Snow Queen and the Pothos and Joy. And so it's kind of like combining some of my favorite aspects of the other plants together into this one. And so I feel like it made the most sense to choose for my third. It was difficult though. I do love myself an epipremnum. They're like some of the easiest, chillest plants to get. I mean, except in the US, you can't really get a Manjula for cheap, so sorry. And then the final, more specific category, I mean, I guess it's kind of specific, but also kind of very general. It is cacti and succulents together, because I don't have that many of either of them, and so it just made sense to join them. So the first one I would pick definitely is my Euphorbia lactea white ghost. Just like look at her. She's grown so well for me, and I do really like that the white ghost, you can get ones that are more sort of this level of variegation where it's got more green in it, or you can get ones that are very white and like more yellowy, or you can get one like mine that's sort of a combination of both. There's some as well that have like darker marks. Do I have a bit of darkness on this one? Actually, kind of. This little bit of white has it's got like a little mole or a birthmark, which is quite cute. So that's quite fun. But she's a really easy one, and also she does have, this one's got pink spots as well, which is quite cool. And what I really like about the lactee, in general is they're very, very branchy, as opposed to some of my other euphorbias, which, I mean, they're not huge. In theory, they would branch out a little bit more in time, but they're kind of just like single poles at this point. This one has been very, 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 very branchy for me. I feel like all of these top branches are kind of new. It just branches out quite a lot, and I think that's a characteristic I really like in my cacti and succulents. So this one, easily the top spot. Okay, my camera overheated, so I needed to sit down for a minute and let it cool out. So sorry if the angle is a little bit different, but it's actually for the best because I thought of another category, another genus that I hadn't thought of before, which I've picked more plants for, Dracaena, which I'm going to talk about after the cacti and succulents because I picked some nice Dracaenas. Okay, so the next cactus that I'm going to include in there is the booby cactus because it is just such a fun one. I really, really love the shape of it. And it was kind of a toss-up between this and the blue myrtillo cactus. I'm pretty sure the booby cactus is a myrtillo cactus. I'm not as like well versed with cactus genuses, genre, whatever they are. I'm not as well versed at them, so I'm not 100% sure, but I freaking love this one. I think it is so cool. I just love the little boobies. Mine has grown fairly well for me in the time I've had it. It was 8 boobies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It was 8 boobies the last time I counted. And now it's, or did I measure? 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. It's 11-ish boobies now. Boobies tall now. So it's doing very well for me, and I know it has gotten a little bit skinny at the top. Maybe it's a little bit, ow, that hurt. Maybe it's a little bit attenuated, but that's okay. I don't really mind. I still think it's really cool, and I love the sort of color of it as well. It's a much more bluey green, and it's just fun. It's just a cool, fun one. And then the last one, I went kind of rogue here. Very, very, very different. The dead stick plant. I really freaking love this one. I think it is really cool and weird and different and so unlike a lot of other cacti and succulents. I know I could have gone for something like a little echeveria or whatever, but I don't really get along well with them, so it wouldn't be my first choice or even my second choice. I much prefer this sort of fun, weird one, and I know it looks solid green, but I really like that it's kind of dappled in there and textured. It's just really cool. It's really cool and fun and different and funky. It kind of looks like it was supposed to grow underwater like seaweed, but it's not. It grows in my home, in my cactus cabinet, and it's doing really, really well. I think when I got it, it might have been around this tall. And now she's much, much taller and spreading out a bit. And I'm kind of surprised she's not wilting more or like getting too heavy for herself. I don't know why she's a she, but apparently she is. And it's just a really cool, weird one. And I thought it would make for a nice variety because I guess, I mean, the other two, they're very much, they're not even samey because one's a euphorbia and one's a myrtillo cactus. Like, they're not even a cactus and they're cactus and a succulent. They aren't even that similar. But I feel like this one's just a fun, weird, different one that really made sense to add in there as a bit of variety of texture, I think. All right, so getting into the Dracaenas, and part of the reason why I remembered it is because I was thinking about the sort of odd ones out and why I didn't have a Sansevieria on there, but then I remembered Sansevierias have been reclassified as Dracaenas, and so I can make a little Dracaena pile, or a little pick 3 of Dracaena, and include my Sansevieria metallica in that, because I freaking love this thing. It is my favorite trifasciata, is that what it's called, of the Dracaenas? The snake plant ones. It's just so cool, and I love the striping on the leaves. And I mean, you can tell a lot of the plants I've picked in this one are on the more like silvery blue side. I've tried to like mix it up a little bit, but I always end up coming back to these silvery blue, stripy sort of variegation ones because They make me the happiest. I think they fit in well with my sort of vibe and personality. And also, I found that this one can grow quite big and tall. The tallest ones on here is probably about 1 meter in height, which is great. When it gets enough light, it can grow really tall, but right now I don't have it in a particularly bright spot. It's very far pulled back from window, it doesn't get any grow light, and it's just been chugging along just fine. But when I had it with a grow light in front of it, it decided to grow the really tall ones, and so depending on how you grow it, it will grow differently, I guess, obviously. But if you give it more light, it will, in general, grow better. That being said, it's pushing out new growth anyways down at the bottom, so it's a cool, fun one, and I really love it, and I'm very glad that I've now been able to add this to my mini collection of plants here. Going for a more Dracaena, but like surprisingly also not a very Dracaena is the Dracaena goldiana, this one here. And this one is fairly new to my collection, so I can't say too much about how well or easy it grows. But I've picked it just for the coloration on it, because it looks so unlike a sort of normal dragon tree or Dracaena or corn plant. All of those, they're very different to this one. It's so funky and fun, and I just love these sort of stripy leaves, kind of like a camouflage pattern on them. And the leaves are also quite broad compared to a lot of the other Dracaena, which tend to have very like long skinny leaves. These are kind of short and fat, and I really like it, and I find it really fun. And also the new growth coming in, a bit more of a purpley color, that's quite fun as well. So like I said, I can't say too much about this one because it is still very new to me, but she is a fun one, and I'm glad she's a part of this collection. And so between those two, I have both a Sansevieria style and a more Dracaena. I know it's confusing, but it makes sense in my head. And so I could have picked another Sansevieria. I thought about it, because there are some really cool ones like the Silver Flame or the Zelinica, or even the Bantel Sensation, though that's a bit more yellowy than I would want to put into this collection. But I decided on the Dracaena Fragrance White Jewel, because it is just, again, such a chill one. This one lives right by my Begonia Corallina de Lucerna, which is in my kitchen window, not receiving anything. I care about this one. Not that I care about it zero. I give it zero care. And it's just doing its thing and growing really, really well for me. And it's just happy and healthy and lovely. I know it kind of leans in vibe towards the Metallica in sort of the stripiness of the leaves and the coloration, but I mean, I don't have any like marginatas that I could put in, and I don't even think they would beat out my other Sansevierias, but this one does. So I feel like it makes sense, and this is a more Dracaena, in my opinion. I know that sounds weird, but that's just how my head is thinking about it, and it's doing really well. I mean, maybe I should pot it lower in the pot and maybe let some roots grow in for this section, but I don't really feel like it even needs that. It's perfectly happy just doing its thing in there. And also this one gets quite dusty because it lives in my kitchen, and so that just, you know how like everything in your kitchen just ends up with like a little bit of a film of oil on it just through cooking or whatever? Or maybe that's just me. Sorry, maybe that's embarrassing. I don't know. But the plant does as well, and because I don't like very, very, very regularly wash this one off, it does end up collecting a little bit more dust, and it doesn't mind. It's absolutely fine, and it still looks beautiful, and still actually puts out new growth regardless. So she's a lovely, chill one. Okay, and then the last category is my other category, things that I only have one of, really, that I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't include in this collection. So I know it does raise the numbers and it's like not a top 3 of genuses or whatever, but This is my video, I'm gonna do this how I want to. And so the first one in that is the bird of paradise, the strelitzia. Absolutely, that would come with me in my sort of mini collection here. I feel like it is a really great statement plant. It is big, it's sun-loving as well, so perfect for a sort of sunny spot in your home. They would love that. It's got really nice big broad leaves, and it's more of like a tree than I feel like the rest of the ones in this collection. It's just generally a bigger plant, and I feel like I don't have, I mean, yes, I do have big ones on this list, but they're not big in that way. And so I really wanted to add that one in there. Also, I want to pop in a variegated cast iron plant. I would highly, highly recommend these as one that just is so chill, does not require all that much work or effort, can tolerate a huge range in like light, in temperature, in humidity, it can tolerate underwatering as well. Just a very, very chill one. And I would particularly go for a variegated one as opposed to a normal one, just because I like variegated plants. It's fun. You could go for like the Milky Way with the spots, or the like classic variegated one with the stripes on it. Really cool. Or just the plain green one. The plain green one is perfectly lovely, and I do really like it too. I'm also going to pop a Rhaphidophora tetrasperma onto this list because they are, again, very, very easy and chill. I know there's like quite a wide variety of Rhaphidophora, but I don't think I even have 3 that I would definitely pick. I would really only pick the tetrasperma to be in this sort of collection of plants because I think it is one of the coolest ones. And I feel like if you have that, you definitely don't need a sort of small leafed monstera, because it's nicknamed the Monstera minima, even though it's not a monstera at all, it's a Rhaphidophora. I was very tempted to actually pop that into the monstera section of this, even though it's not one, purely because of its nickname, and because I do think it definitely deserves to be in this mini collection that I'm creating. So it's just a really cool one. It grows so fast. My one grew to the top of my moss pole, which is over the height of my head, and I'm 5'9", in the space of a year. Such a fast grower, so chill and easy. Mine had massive thrips, and it was just doing fine. You can also grow them up a plank or a wall, let them attach to that, and like climb up things, which is really fun. So lots of options there. They're also super easy to propagate and generally a really low maintenance plant, which is great. And then finally, I wanted to add an Asacananthus to the list, and my favorite Asacananthus is this one, the variegated one, or the Labianus, I think it is. This is just such a cool one, and it almost gives Hoya vibes in its leaves, but they grow lovely flowers as well. I really like the sort of variegation on this one. It's splashy and lovely, and they do really, really well in bright light too, so have it hanging in a window, and it would absolutely love that. This one absolutely adored hanging in the window. It got too big for the spot I had it in, but when it was in the window, it thrived. It's just another really fun one that I think deserves a mention in this, because I would definitely not want to leave it out of my mini collection I've created here. So yeah, there you have it. Those are the plants I would pick. I'd be really curious to know if you would pick the same plants I did, or if you would trade something out for something else. Let me know down below in the comments. Put your whole list down there, because I think it's fun. I love seeing what other people pick and choose, because we all have different opinions on things, we all have different plants in our collections, and we all have different ideas about what's best as well. So tell me, and I would love to see. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up down below and leave a comment on other houseplanty things you'd like me to talk about in the future, and please subscribe for more. Thanks again so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and don't forget to keep growing. Bye!